equanimity and some grace, and remember that the election now is behind us, Mr. Speaker. So, in my own opinion, he should be discouraged, and those of us who are his friends, like my friend Cherargei, should dissuade the president when he is speaking to the nation from throwing in unnecessary jibes, like the ones he was throwing during his address to the parliament on the question of who was the opposition candidate and who was the government candidate. I don't think it is necessary. We need now to all move on from this particular election. Mr. Speaker, allow me to address the things that I heard the president say, and then to address the questions or the things that I didn't hear the president say.
Senator Sifuna, you wanted protection from the chair, but you are the one who is causing your insecurity. And
Mr.
so
Speaker,
please let us avoid a lot of point of orders, because many senators in this room want to contribute to this motion.
Mr. Speaker,
so what is out of order, Cherargei? Which standing order are you putting? Which standing order, which number?
Mr. Speaker, on a related issue, understanding order number 1, which of course you have powers. Mr. Speaker, if you have noticed, we are disadvantaged on this side because our cards are not functional. And therefore, if we have any matter to raise, either as a point of order or any other issue, Mr. Speaker, can you direct the officers from ICT to ensure our cards are functional? Because the way Senator Sifuna is going, we might need some necessary and important interventions at some point. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So, Senator Cherargei, anytime you want to raise any issue, just catch the speaker's eye and you'll be given that opportunity. No, wake up, stand, put hands up, raise up from the seat. All those are acceptable. Traditional methods. Yeah. Proceed, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, you can see Sifuna. Why I took the earliest possible opportunity to seek your protection, because I know exactly what I am expecting on this particular floor this afternoon.
Acrimonious.
Mr. Speaker,
okay, proceed.
Let me conclude that particular point that I was making by saying that all of us now recognize that we have one leadership in the country. And that, in fact, as SG of ODM, I've said this before, and I want to put it here on record, none of us in ODM or in the opposition or minority party want this president or this government to fail. We are here to ensure that we provide the necessary supervision on this particular government so that they succeed. So, Mr. Speaker, first let me join hands or join the president in congratulating all the women, the extra women who are able to be elected as members of parliament in the individual constituencies. We know that it has been a difficult, process in this country to try and make sure that we achieve gender parity, especially in the National Assembly. I am very proud again, Mr. Speaker, as SG of ODM, that out of those 6 extra seats that we got or won in the, that women got in the National Assembly, 2 of them actually came from ODM. And I am happy that in this House, we have leaders of political parties. I have counted at least 3 SGs in this Senate, Mr. Speaker. And I am sure they will share in my disappointment, because one of the senators, when speaking to this point, I believe it was Senator Peris Tobiko, urged that political parties need to do more in order to encourage more women to participate in election and to actually end up elected. But I am sure the SGs in this House can share in my experience that, in fact, if we do not relook at the entire architecture of how people get elected to individual posts, then it is going to be very difficult for us to be able to achieve the gender parity that we are looking for. This first past the post system, Mr. Speaker, simply does not work if you wanted to achieve gender parity in the Houses of Parliament. So I am hoping that even as people continue to ask political parties to do more, we can have a relook at the entire architecture so that we don't just blame political parties for not doing enough to have women elected. Now, I was happy to hear the President ask and expect that he will expect bipartisan support for his agenda. That bipartisan support can only come when we see the sort of respect that I was speaking about and the realization that now you are the leader of the entire country and not partisan positions being advocated out there. Mr. Speaker, I also heard the President speak about having more resources to the judiciary, and that this is what is going to allow or facilitate expeditious settlement of corruption cases. Mr. Speaker, it has been raised on this floor by my colleagues on the minority side that in fact we need to hear more about the plans of this government to be able to fight the scourge that is corruption. And increasing of resources to the judiciary alone, we don't believe is going to be the solution to the question of corruption, because you cannot argue that the only problem we are facing as a country when it comes to corruption is the question of slow resolution of those cases in the judiciary. And also, Mr. Speaker, to remind the country that even within the judiciary itself, the problem of corruption actually exists, so that if you prescribe a solution, it has to be a wholesome solution to ensure that we fight this monster once and for all. I was, of course, very disappointed, Mr. Speaker, because the President has chosen to abandon some of the protections that were in place to cushion members of the public, to cushion the ordinary mwananchi from the high cost of living. I was very disappointed that he has chosen to abandon the subsidies that were in place prior to the election when it comes to the price of fuel and the price of food. Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, we have a lot of Kenyans who are still suffering. And we were promised by the President himself during his campaign that he would be ready on day one to be able to tackle the problems that are afflicting our people, and especially on the high cost of living. I would not have had a problem, Mr. Speaker, if the President maintained those subsidies for the time being, as he still tries to find his way around government and to find the solutions that he believes will work, so that we are able to cushion our people from the high cost of living. Mr. Speaker, he also announced a reduction in the price of fertilizer as a way of trying to reduce the cost of living. And this, we have been told here that now we are to expect the next crop. Kenyans are supposed to go hungry or suffer for the duration it takes to raise a fresh crop of maize, and that immediately that is here, we're using the new fertilizer, that now the prices of food will go down. That is what we've been told. So we have been asked to tighten our belts. And Senator Cherargei, you told me this in an informal setting, that once the new crop of maize is here, I don't know how long it will take, using the what is it called? The subsidized fertilizer, for us to be able to have a new crop. So we are all waiting, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna, do you want to be informed by your colleague friend?
I want to warn him that I am also a farmer. So before he informs me, let him know that I am also a farmer. Inform me.
Have a seat. Have your seat. Take your seat. Take your seat.
Mr. Speaker, with all due respect to Senator Sifuna, the last time he used to refer us as to upcountry or rural senators. So I don't know whether there is farming in Nairobi. But on a point of information, I wanted to clarify an issue of maturity of crop. I appreciate where he comes from. They also plant maize. But we have a new breed, hybrid, that is produced by National Cereals Produce, but that can be ready within 3 months. So it's not necessarily that it means 9 months or 1 year. So
give him inform him the type of that hybrid. What is it? What is the name of that hybrid?
The name of that hybrid, Mr. Speaker, I think is H512A hybrid. Is it 512 that can mature within 3 months, not the normal 9 months. So when we say you get a cheaper fertilizer, it can mature within that 3 months, and Kenyans can be able to harvest the crop. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Sifuna, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I doubt that I have any more information than I left with when I went to sit down, but I thank my brother for the effort. Mr. Speaker, we had a plan as well for reduction of the cost of living, and we actually believe, Mr. Speaker, that there is an alternative path to reducing the cost of living and especially the cost of food. We have had occasion to have conversations with farmers in the Rift, and they pointed out that, Mr. Speaker, the problem largely has been, number one, the over-reliance on rain-fed agriculture, which has become very unreliable given the scourge of climate change. And number two, that in fact, certain practices, mainly corruption within the food industry, has dissuaded many farmers from planting their crop. That in fact, sometimes they end up with a good harvest, but they are unable to put this harvest to the market because there are senior people within the Republic who then take up that position or that quota that was to be allocated to these farmers, Mr. Speaker. So I also believe that if indeed we wanted to ensure food security, we need to move away from rain-fed agriculture. We want to see a plan on irrigation, especially revival of the projects that are collapsed, including the ones in Tana River, Galana, Kulalu, and the others, to ensure food security, Mr. Speaker. The proposal that we have had from the government side to introduce GMO as a way of ensuring food security, Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of problems with it. In other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, whenever there is a controversy that scientists on both sides don't agree on any particular point, they usually encourage people to teach the controversy, Mr. Speaker. So you have been challenging my brothers and friends on this side to table evidence to show that there is no safety in GMO. Mr. Speaker, what I want to encourage you is to allow people to debate the controversy.
Senator Sifuna, there is an intervention from Senator from Kisii, Onyonka Richard. Is it an intervention or you want to contribute to the motion? Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Proceed, Senator Sifuna.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I can see already my time is almost up. What we have asked for from the minority side is that a decision such as the lifting of a ban of GMO is such a radical policy pronouncement that we believe that this is a matter upon which further public participation ought to have been taken before the decision is made. Mr. Speaker, I want to refer the House to Article number 10 of the Constitution, where it says that whenever any state officer, public officer, or any person makes or implements public policy decisions, they are tied down to following or complying with the, the national principles and values that are set out in Article 10, including patriotism and participation of the people, Mr. Speaker. We do not believe that that particular decision was subjected to that process. Mr. Speaker, finally, I know that if I give my own opinion on some of these things, it will be dismissed here. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to inform the House that I, Sifuna, am a Catholic, and Catholics take policy positions from the Pope. And the Pope speaks to these issues through letters to his bishops called encyclicals. Mr. Speaker, the Pope has already issued an encyclical on the question of GMO foods. And if you allow me, Mr. Speaker, I would like to read an excerpt from this particular encyclical.
Senator Cherargei, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, according to Standing Order 101 on contents of speech, when you look at when you extrapolate Standing Order 101-2, this matter of GMO, you had given directions on this matter. And in fact, I remember, was it Senator from Vihiga, who you may have directed to produce evidence on that issue of GMO. And I think that matter had been dealt with. So I don't know why Senator Sifuna is introducing an issue of argument when he knows very well that what he's trying to do is casting aspersions on the government lifting of GMO. Because, Mr. Speaker, I know this is like anticipating debate. Because this is something that the government is yet to issue guidelines on lifting of the GMO ban, Mr. Speaker. So I would request my brother Senator, through you, Senator Sifuna, to desist from introducing something that is not even part of the speech of the President, Mr. Speaker. Why is he shooting in the dark when he cannot know where he's aiming at? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna, you have less than 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, with due respect, you can see this is the reason why I was asking for your protection. I am not introducing any matter. I am addressing myself to the President's proposals on food security. And I am allowed by the standing orders to read brief references from an authority like the Pope. I think the other speakers, the other senators who spoke have not availed themselves of authorities from their faith. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to read this.
Sympathetic to you. Have you finished?
I want to read this.
Reading the Pope's message.
Yes?
Are you done, or you know your time is really...
Please, most of the time, Mr. Speaker, add me 2 minutes so that I just read this passage from this encyclical
1 minute,
and sit
please,
down.
1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this is the encyclical, and all these documents are available on the Vatican website. If you are unable to access the website because you are a rural senator, I can get one from the Bishop Agnolo's office for you. Mr. Speaker, this is what the Pope says. Although no conclusive proof exists that GM cereals may be harmful to human beings, and in some regions their use has brought about economic growth which has helped to resolve problems, there remain a number of significant difficulties which should not be underestimated. In many places following the introduction of these crops, productive land is concentrated in the hands of a few owners due to the progressive disappearance of small producers who, as a consequence of the loss of the exploited lands, are obliged to withdraw from direct production. Mr. Speaker, he says the most vulnerable of these become temporary laborers, and many rural workers end up moving to poverty-stricken urban areas. The expansion of these crops has the effect of destroying the complex networks of ecosystems, diminishing the diversity of production, and affecting regional economies now and in the future. Mr. Speaker, he concludes on this particular topic by saying, certainly these issues require constant attention and a concern for their ethical implications. A broad, responsible scientific and social debate needs to take place, one capable of considering all the available information and of calling things by their name. It sometimes happens that complete information is not put on the table. A selection is made on the basis of particular interests, be they political, economical, or ideological. This makes it difficult to reach a balanced and prudent judgment on these different questions. Mr. Speaker, it is not my words. This is the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, which I'm a member, saying that we need to have a debate in line with Article 10.
Your time is up, but I want to advise you that I'm happy that the motion on the imprisonment of members of this House in the committees. Now the government will engage this House in the final steps on GMOs and any other policies. I wish you could go to Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries Committee, where you can be very efficient and advise the government on what should be done. But as a senator of this House, you can be a friend of that committee. You will be invited when they will sit so that you can actually try to persuade